Hey, what's going on? This is Huxley, DJ and producer, and you're listening to the Liverpool Connection podcast, music and football episodes. I hope you enjoy it.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Liverpool Connection podcast. I am Daz, your host. This is my music and football and more, where we talk about the two loves of life, which for me is music and football. Not forgetting family, that's always number one. I've got to put that out, or my missus will have a go at me. But I've got such a great guest on. I've listened to his DJ sets for a long time. I've bought his music for a long time. I first got introduced with my next guest with the Inkwell EP
Oh,
on
okay, cool.
Will Soul's house music label, which is a fantastic label. I've had Will on before, and just amazing fella, and a Spurs
Mm,
supporter as well, which you have in common. But I've
yeah,
DJ and producer Huxley on, who has been on labels such as House Music,
yeah,
Haydn, 2020 Vision, Record.
yeah,
Good
yeah, I
Lord.
reckon.
The
Yeah.
list is look just it's growing and growing. And I hope to talk to you about your Sates and Sonnets label. I hope you bring that back
Wow,
at some point.
there
Um,
might be an exclusive in this chat then for you, actually.
nice, very nice. He's
Yeah,
also a Spurs supporter, and after so many years of winning absolutely nothing,
I
winning
know.
winning the Europa League last season and beating Man United. I watched it. It wasn't the best final, but
It was terrible, the actual match, yeah.
who cares? You,
Mm.
you you lifted the trophy. I mean, it's kind of like going back to the Champions League final between Liverpool and Spurs. It
Oh,
wasn't the
yeah,
best match to watch, but at the end
no.
of the day, I'll take lifting the Champions League every day of the week.
Yeah, I mean, I would do as well. I think I saw this week that it was Son, who obviously just left, was the last player that we had during that final to kind of, leave, fly the coop, leave Tottenham. It's quite sad, really, because, that was a massive thing for him. I mean, obviously, I think in the end of that game, probably the best team won. I think we kind of, it was an incredible season for us, but it was a fantastic thing. But to actually win the trophy, I couldn't believe it. I was in Brighton. It was actually Brighton Music Conference, and me and some friends had rented, well, the people I run our tribe with. Well, I actually didn't realize I had this t-shirt on until we started doing it. But we were doing a party and we rented an Airbnb in Brighton, which is actually like 25 minutes from where I live anyway. So it was essentially just to like have a bit of a party. But yeah, I watched it with a friend of mine who's a big Brighton fan, and he was, I was, it was a hard watch, is all I'm going to say. Watching with other people who generally either want to hate Spurs because they're my mates, or people who are in the corner doing whatever they're doing, and me trying to focus on the TV. It was quite an interesting way to watch the final, but you know, it was definitely a good night after that. Is all I'm going to say. It was
Oh, I
carried on
bet.
for quite a while. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is sad because with Son, because I know Klopp loved Son. I think maybe if he'd come in with, because I know Liverpool were interested in him because he was
Mm.
so fast and he's so skillful. But I watched the friendly against Arsenal the other night,
Oh
and
yeah. Yeah.
Son's
Yeah.
match. Even I had a bit of tears in my eyes, because
Yeah.
he's just. I always say this. I'm not just a Liverpool supporter. I'm a football supporter as well. So I like
Yeah.
watching. I like to watch football as much as I can. It gets me away from the kids and everything.
Fair
Um,
enough. Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
mean, Son is he's going down in folklore for
I
Spurs.
think so. I think he's one of like again. We were talking about this before we got on, but there's people now debating whether or not he's a kind of Tottenham legend. I don't think you can really argue that. In fact, he is. He's played over 400 times. I think for Tottenham, I think he's fourth or fifth top goal scorer for in the Premier League era, anyway. And I think you can't. The fact that he probably you know, at periods of Tottenham was almost too good for us in a way, and like you say, could have ended up at Liverpool or lots of other kind of, you know, bigger team. I don't want to say bigger teams, but you know what I mean. Kind of like teams that are doing better than us right now. But I think that you could see the love for the club that he had. Like he's crying when he's leaving. That him winning that trophy, I feel like because of his love for the club meant more to him than it probably would have done if he'd have gone, you know, somewhere else and won and then won something in the first season. You could really see the joy in his face. And the funny thing is, obviously, him and Kane were such a great partnership, but then Kane leaves and they finally win something. It's a little bit ironic, really. But I'm he for me has been one of my favorite players for years. It was Aaron Lennon, and then it was Son, basically. I
Yeah,
like
and
the
now
pace he was.
he's going to the MLS.
Mm.
Which,
The highest transfer apparently ever or something, which I
yeah,
mean I think is good. At 33, you can't really argue with that stat. That's pretty good going. I think he'll do a
yeah,
job in America because it's a different game.
it is. It's slower paced. I actually I just can't get into MLS. It's I mean the American audience will probably slate me, but it's like League Two. It really is. And it's more enjoyable when you actually go to the match. I can't watch it on the telly. I just can't
Yeah.
do it. I watched when Gareth Bale played for LA. They came here. We have a team, Austin FC, and I went.
Oh yeah.
I've never seen a lazier player. He
He
was
just couldn't be
here for
asked at that point, could he really?
he was just walking around the pitch.
I mean,
It's
to be fair, like he was another one of my favorite players. Again, pacey winger, but
oh,
he was so injury prone that I guess at that point in his career, probably he ran when he had to, basically, and didn't want to do anything to exacerbate his like big problems. It's I haven't been to an MLS game, but I think I can't remember where I was. I was on tour somewhere, and I turned on the TV and I watched Jermaine Defoe absolutely ripping it up for Toronto in one game. I think. I would probably agree with you. It's like League One or League Two, the quality, but it's quite nice that these players that are maybe lost their pace, like their pace or whatever, have somewhere lucrative to come and finish their careers. That's not Saudi Arabia, which I
yeah.
think is a completely different kettle of fish.
I also think it'll help to grow football in America.
Mm,
Um, I mean, we've got the World Cup here, next year as well as
yeah,
Canada, Mexico. But I mean, I've always said this, like, for middle class, underprivileged children, this football, the sport, you only need a ball. That's it.
yeah, it's true, man. Yeah, yeah.
It's not a rich man's game like a lot of others are. So, I think it'll grow, but the problem I have with the MLS is there's no promotion and there's no relegation.
Oh
So
yeah, I mean, there's nothing to fight for in a way. Then I guess I actually didn't know that. I thought there was two leagues for some reason, but yeah, I mean, you need that jeopardy of going up and down. I think, it, and maybe this is not the way to phrase it, but it feels like that there's almost no point in doing it if you don't win or lose. I think I always think that in everything. It's like kids these days, you get patted on the back just as much as if you win or if you lose. I actually think losing is a great thing in if you can harness it and do it in the right way, I think one of the reasons that myself and maybe others have succeeded in the passion they've wanted to do, but my being music is because those losses, rather than defeating me and just getting a nice pat on the back, going, well, at least you tried. They actually spurred me on to, become a better producer, do it in a different way, find my own niche rather than. And now I think, if everyone gets a like, well done, you've done just as well as someone who's won. I just think it breeds the wrong kind of mentality. You don't have the same competitive spirit, in my opinion.
no, I 100% agree with that. I think you just would stay at the same level.
Completely. You have to, and
Yeah.
something I do, and people won't know. Like, obviously, they won't know it. and I used to do it in a really unhealthy way, and maybe we'll speak about that later. But I kind of see certain people within the music industry, and I compete against them. Quality of records, like where they're releasing, what they're playing, where they're playing. But I don't do it for a thing that I want them to fail. I like to pit myself against someone. It drives me and spurs me on to do better. I use it as a real motivating factor. And I think, yeah, I mean, we're talking about football, but I think it's true with any kind of, you know, pa career where you have to fight to be heard or fight to play or whatever. I think it's just a really good ideology and mentality to have.
Yeah, I mean, it's a positivity, I think, and trying to, I mean, like I'm a chef, so I
You always want to make the better food, right?
yeah, of course you do, and you kind of want to be unique, and I think
Yeah.
it's the same with footballers as well. I mean, Liverpool just signed Wirtz, who is just outstanding. I mean, he's 23 years old, and
Mm.
but then we lost a generational talent in Trent, but we've added something else.
Mm.
Yes, we haven't added the same defender, but
No.
we've added to the team who I think is also a generational talent who is
Oh
on
yeah.
and maybe will be better than how Trent used to spray the ball all over the pitch.
Yeah,
So
I mean, he's a
that's
great
how
player.
oh yeah. And and
It's a
and
bit when we lost Carl Walker, to be honest. It was a similar, Carl Walker was apart before. Now we got Trent. He was obviously the best English right back for years, and when we lost him, I felt a massive loss. Like, how are we going to replace him? And some might say that we've never really had a player quite of his quality since. But you know, yeah, I completely agree with you. Liverpool have definitely done that. They've worked, and when you've got Van Dijk at the back as well, like firming things up, whoever's kind of standing with near him, he's gonna do a job.
I think if we stood next to him, we'd do a
Yeah,
job.
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
That's how
yeah.
I feel about Van Dijk. He puts his arm around you and be like, "We'll be all right," and
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
shaking in your boots, going, "I've never played football in my life. It'll be all right.
yeah.
All right." You're
Yeah,
next to me, and you're just
yeah,
like
yeah.
going, "All right, we'll be all right." I just feel so safe in
Yeah, yeah.
Van Dijk's arms. You know,
Yeah, well, that's fair. I mean, I think, yeah. I mean, but Trent obviously wanted to leave. I think it's true with any footballer. If someone wants to leave, there's no point in forcing them to stay because they're never going to give you what they used to. I don't think, really. I mean,
yeah.
you look at Morgan Gibbs White, right? Obviously, I mean that interview when he's re-signed with, Marinakis or whatever. It looks like he's been kidnapped and is saying stuff under duress. Yeah, I can't imagine he's going to have quite the same passion he had before because, you know, and all due respect to them, he's now not going to be moving to any of the big teams for quite a while. And that was probably quite a motivating factor to play as well as he has done.
Yeah, I mean, with Trent, I just think it's the way he left.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't great. Yeah.
Put a sour taste. I mean, if he'd come out like a year or two before and said, "Look, at the end of my contract, I'll be moving," I think everyone would have been all right with it. But it was, and we got what 10 million for him at the end. We
Yeah,
could
it's
have got
crazy.
100, but that's how Real Madrid play. They got him back
Yeah, yeah.
free. It's just snake in the grass. I mean,
It's a bit how I feel about Sol Campbell, to be fair. I
oh,
mean,
oh yeah.
very similar in lots of ways, but in some ways worse, actually. But you're right. I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, Real Madrid has just money and wages and stuff to throw at these players. And, there's not that many English players that have gone to Real Madrid or Barcelona, really, in the history of things. So it's obviously quite a big draw for players. But yeah, you're right. The way he left was probably would leave a bad taste in my mouth as well if I was a Liverpool fan. But then, we were talking about this again day before, that Liverpool are now open their checkbook. It's not like they're not trying to, make the situation better and they're just, leaving that gaping hole.
Well, players come and go. That's the thing. I mean, when I was younger, my childhood hero was Kevin Keegan,
Oh
and
yeah.
but I'd only known him for a year because my first was when I was 6, and he left in '77. Um,
Okay.
so I only knew him for a year, but I got all the posters and everything. And he left, and I ripped the poster up, and me granddad was shaking. He actually put the poster back together, and he goes, "Don't you ever do that ever
Oh
again."
wow.
And it kind of taught me a lesson, but as you get older, you don't get so attached to these players like you used to
No.
when you were younger. So Trent leaving, I'm like, look, he's been at the club since he was 6. He's given everything and he's won us everything.
Mm.
The way he left, I didn't like. But you know what? He goes, we'll bring somebody else in. That's the thing, with football, it always happens like that. Everybody thought when Keegan left, who was coming in, we got Dalglish. When Dalglish
Yeah.
left, the Aldridge, we got Rush, we got Barnes. So it's just, I think people just need to kind of calm down.
Calm down a bit. Yeah. You never know what's coming next, right? You don't know just because just because it's been good with that person for so long doesn't mean it can't be as good with someone else. I think that's very true. We had after Sol, not quite straight away, but we had Ledley King, who, if he'd have stayed fit, I think probably could have been one of the best English centre backs ever, to be honest with you. But he just couldn't stay fit. I mean, you're listing all these players that are legends and actually played well. I'm listing players that I love, but it always could have been better. It feels like, and I guess that's probably part of the problem with Tottenham and the mentality there. But there you go. It is
Yeah,
what it is.
you had Glenn Hoddle, which
Yeah.
to me he's a legend. Again, that team of like Gary Mabbutt, Garth Crooks, Steve
Mm,
Archibald, the team that won the FA Cup, Ricky Villa,
yeah.
Ozzy Ardiles. That team was very, very good.
Yeah.
And that final, the replay where Ricky Villa scored that mazy run to basically win you the FA Cup was absolutely fantastic. I remember where I was, that day.
Oh, really? I mean, I think I've only seen that match once years ago. It was quite when I was quite young when that happened. I have
Yeah,
to. I don't actually. What year was that? Was that 89?
81, I
Was it
think.
81? Oh, I wasn't even
Yeah.
born then. There you go.
Yeah.
Maybe I saw it when I was that age. But yeah, yeah. So it's funny, isn't it? Because I see like when we finished just behind Arsenal a few years ago. As like, I thought that team was great, and I thought we could have possibly done better than we did, but it wasn't to be, unfortunately.
Well, hopefully you'll kick on and do better than 16th place.
You would hope so, yeah.
I like Thomas Frank, by the way. I think
I do,
the class
yeah.
side.
I think he's the manager we need at the moment. Ange obviously won the competition, but I watched an interview with Daniel Levy, or parts of it, anyway, on TikTok. I say I watch all of it. You know what it is these days, so the attention span of a fish. But he was talking about how it was the right decision, even though he won us a competition. We lost 22 Premiership games last season as a team that should be, in my opinion, challenging for top five, top four, top five every season, at least challenging for it. You just cut you have to be a manager that knows how to win games in the Premiership, and I don't think Ange, with that team anyway, really knows how to do it.
Yeah, and I just think it was too much for him, to be
Yeah.
honest. It's
But
kind of like, when Gerrard was manager of Rangers, I
oh yeah.
think he should have stayed there for a few more years and tried to win the league a bit more. And I think the same with Ange.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I agree with you, to be honest. I mean, I think Ange went Australian like minor league, then Japan, was it Japan, and then Scotland, and then straight into the Premiership. The Premiership's a completely different. I understand it's obviously enticing as a manager. You want to play it, but there's nothing like you know, yeah, working your way in. I think is
Yeah,
probably the way to do it.
yeah. I just think that he should have started, maybe championship level, but it is
Yeah,
what
that's
it is.
what I think. Yeah, it is what it is. Anyway, who knows what he'll do next, I suppose.
Yeah. But he'll probably just open a can of Fosters and go at it. Yeah, I wish Spurs all the best as long as Liverpool are above them.
Which I think they probably will be for at least the next couple of years anyway. Let's
Yeah,
see.
I hope so. But I want to.
Football's a funny game, though. You never know. I mean, look at Man United. I know they're rubbish now, but you never thought they were going to quite implode the way they have.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, a Premier League without Man United, us playing Man United because the fierce rivalry. But God, they were this close to getting relegated, and I was
Yeah.
loving every second of it. It's
No,
the
I bet.
same with Everton as well. They're always in that bottom five, and I was like, is this the year that they're going to get relegated? I mean, I don't want, like, for me, Everton are part of the city, and
Mm.
it's like I just want them to drop down for a season,
Yeah, 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 yeah. Of course, because I
come
mean,
back up.
I mean, yeah, I completely understand that. Man United and Tottenham aren't the biggest of rivals, but I used to live in a house with like four very southern Man United fans. So ever since then, I've fucking hated them, to be honest with you. So seeing their downfall is a pleasure. Unfortunately, though, it was also conjoined with our downfall, so it did kind of ruin the season.
Yeah, that's a bit of a morbid house right there.
Yeah, tell me about it. I'm glad we weren't there now. I mean, I can remember there being holes punched in the wall over lost games of FIFA. I can't imagine what it would have been like watching Man United lose every week. But there you go.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about the musical side now. So a question I always like to ask is, what was playing in your house early on, and did your mum and dad's music have like an effect on your influences?
Yeah, definitely. My house was quite, there was music on a lot. My dad is very passionate about music. I mean, we mentioned him again before we started, but he got me into like Stevie Ray Vaughan, but then also things like Phil Collins, Lionel Richie, old Motown. He had a lot of twer like 10-inch and stuff. It was always, on Sunday what album is going to put it on. Sometimes it was Leonard Cohen, sometimes it was, Jackson Brown, who actually I've been seeing in concert. Jackson Brown was a big one, but it was a very kind of music was a big focus in my house because not only did you have my dad who actually tried to be a songwriter when I was younger for a bit, he started writing songs with a friend of his from work, and they were trying to put on like a show, which unfortunately never happened in the end. But we had my mum, um, sang in like Gilbert and Sullivan local things, and then also my brother actually, who I would say was one of the ways I got into production, not so much DJing, but he's very, very intelligent. He actually works for Steinberg now. He's one of the head architect programmers on a thing called Dorico, which is kind of for classical musicians. You know, he got into production very early. That's actually his keyboard right there. That he'll be pissed off is sitting like that. But it's yeah, he very much wanted to be a producer as well. He used to spend hours working on this thing called Impulse Track, and I, as like a 9, 10-year-old boy, used to sit there and watch him and kind of try and take it in because I didn't think I could do it. I tried to learn guitar and I learned guitar for a few years. I couldn't play it now. I think I got to grade two, but I literally can't play guitar at all. And then, but he got to grade like five or six on piano, and then I tried to learn piano, but it wasn't. I just couldn't quite click at that point with picking up an instrument. And I think, I had other interests in those days, playing out with my mates and all that kind of stuff. Maybe like literally putting the time in probably didn't seem as important. But growing up, there was always a melting pot of music going on around the house, and it was always quite different. My brother now is into very more IDM-y kind of things like Autechre and 3/6 and a bit more kind of like a bit more niche. But then yeah, my dad was very much into kind of a collection of like that California kind of folk music was a big thing for him, but then also with the soul added added on. So it was quite a mix, like a melting pot actually in our house. But it was always music was being played in the car, or when we were having Sunday lunch, and you know, just it was a very much present in my life. And actually, I knew I wanted to do music quite early because of it, because when I discovered rave music, which actually a friend of mine brought a CD round when I was like 11 or something, the Dreamscape CD with Mickey Finn on and all these kind of like, rave icons. I think it was DJ Psy on that one. I can't remember who else was on it, but that kind of changed my mindset from wanting to be a guitarist or in a band, which was only ever very loose because obviously I wasn't putting in the effort to actually do that because I wasn't learning. But that kind of changed me into right, okay, fuck, I can actually get some decks, and I love this kind of music. I've never heard anything like it because dance music wasn't a thing in our house. The only time we would hear dance music was on Top of the Pops before the introduction of this kind of stuff. To be honest with you, it was just never a thing. My dad, it was after his time. I guess he wasn't going to the raves or anything back in the day. So the discovery of dance music happened around 10 or 11 or something, and that at that point, it was like, okay, I have to get decks. And then as soon as I got my decks, I was like, right, this is what I need to do for my living. I was just obsessed with it.
How old were you when you got your first decks?
So I think I can't remember if I was 11 or 12. No, I must have been 12. I must have been 12. Do you know what? Because I was already at secondary school, and I'd been there for like a year. I pestered my parents to buy me some shitty Sound Lab belt drives with this like Blue Dog Newmark mixer. I think DJ Mag. You've had Carl obviously on here. I used to get DJ Mag religiously and look at like all the set for sale stuff in the back and mark the ones I wanted. But then when actually it came round to it, my parents were like, "What's the cheapest set? Because we don't think you're going to stick to this after my success with guitar and piano." And we got this shitty like belt drive, decks. Yeah, and the Blue Dog mixer, and I got it for Christmas, and I was just obsessed with it. But the funny thing was, because we grew up in this very small town called Tring, I'd never really met any DJs. I'd heard tape packs because we were buying tape packs from raves already, but I didn't really understand. We didn't have YouTube then. This was what, 96, 97, and the internet, which just wasn't what it is now. And so for a year, I didn't even realize that you had to like mix it because I just wasn't around anyone. So we were just kind of buying records. There was a shop, HMV, actually down in Aylesbury, actually had loads of good dance music. Well, let's say good, but like loads of dance music. My first dance music record, I think, was Rip Groove Double 99, and we bought it from there. And then I discovered another record shop called Music House or Record House, I can't remember, down the road. Started buying stuff from that, and then I was buying all these records with like Christmas money, birthday money, all this kind of stuff. And then actually, kind of, my brother was like, "Oh, maybe we actually need to like do something with these records rather than just playing it." And then that's when we discovered, oh shit, we actually have to beat match these. And I can't remember how long it took us to learn, but it probably took him a lot less time than me, to be honest.
And I've got a crazy story. My first pair of decks was Techniques.
Oh,
But
nice. Yeah.
I used to work in this restaurant, and they were cleaning out, like they had like an adjoining building, and they were cleaning it out, and I'd gone to get the manager, and I out the corner of my eye I see a turntable, and
Nice.
it's all dusty, and I look, and there's two of them, and there's a mixer as
Oh,
well.
wow.
So I'm like a schoolboy, in a sweet shop, and I'm just going like, oh my God, like. And then I asked the manager, he's like, yeah, the owner used to own a nightclub, and this is just all the stuff from the nightclub. And then the owner had come in. I was like, well, how do I get hold of him? Like, and see what's going on. And one day, like a week later, he pops up. So I'll go in, I'll talk to him, and I go, yeah, those turntables. He's like, yeah, what about them? I'm like, well, what are you doing with them? He's like, well, I'm about to chuck them. I
Oh my
went,
God.
I went, what? Wait, what? He goes, why you want them? And I went, yeah. He goes, you want that mixer as well? I was like, yeah, and yeah,
Wow. He gave them to
free.
you.
Yeah,
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
yeah,
That that's crazy.
yeah. I mean, I had to take him in to get him like clean, but
Reconditioned or whatever, yeah.
much better paying somebody 100
Oh,
quid,
massively.
both of them and the mixer, than paying.
That's nuts. That
Yeah,
is nuts.
that was my first pair of decks, and I had them for like 20 years after that until I came, like moved to America, and then obviously didn't bring them because
Mm,
it just cost too much to
too
ship.
heavy.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that's my little
That's
stuff.
that's wild. I mean, that actually, funny enough, I've still got one of my Technics there. I got them, I think, on my 16th birthday, and I've had the same ones ever since, which was what, 24 years. I've had them reconditioned. The other one's in my cupboard because I just use that for. So I don't play much at home anymore, which is a bit depressing. But the first time I again, they were a Christmas present, but I petitioned my parents to get me a pair of Technics for about 3 years after I think I got the Sound Labs, and I managed to sell my Sound Labs as well to some friends, but I feel a bit bad about it now because they were a piece of shit, to be fair. But it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that because actually, not turntables, but I don't know where it is now. But back in, I think back in the late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of like the production stuff, like 303s and 909s and stuff, had actually fallen quite out of vogue, and you could actually pick them up for relatively cheap. So I've got an MC202 somewhere, which is like the SH101, but the Groovebox version. I picked it up for like 50 quid, I think, and it's like maybe even less than that, cash converters, but again, because of the internet and how everything you can check so quickly what things are worth, you just don't really get those deals anymore, to be honest, which is a bit of a shame, to be fair. I mean,
It,
not for them,
it
but
is.
for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was just gobsmacked when he just said, "Yeah,
I
go ahead."
can't believe it. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's mental.
yeah, just get him out of here. I was like, "I will, I will, I will," And they were.
That's wild. That is wild. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's the first time I've told that story actually because I haven't
worried
really.
he's going to come back and try and get them now he knows what the price is.
He's probably long gone buried by now. He was an old geezer that obviously didn't know what he had, and
Yeah,
just wanted to get rid of him. And yeah, I was at the right place at the right time, as they say. Now,
nice.
now for you for DJing, did you start to play out a lot, or did you start to go, I need to start making music?
Well, so the first times we started playing out, me, it was like I say, it was quite a small town, village. Well, it's a town, but it's not very big. It's like 10,000 people or something, maybe even less. We didn't have much to do as teenagers, so we used a friend of mine's dad ran a football club, and it wasn't like it is today. Basically, if we let people in, he would let them drink. So we would get him to give this thing for free, and we would set up the decks and we'd play. From 15, I think I was 15 or 14 when we first started doing that. The two people I did it with were the year above me in school. Actually, one of them's still one of my best mates now, but he so that was my introduction to playing out. So at that point, I was just playing for all my schoolmates, while they were drinking. Me and my friend who was DJing were having a like whale of a time. We were just loving it. And my brother was more on, like I said before, was more on the production thing. I was very much focused on like, DJing, but I wanted to learn the production thing. But I guess in some ways at 14, I must have been 14, I didn't ever think that I would kind of be able to do production. So I didn't write it off, but it also made me quite slow to pick it up. I think I watched him for like a year, maybe 18 months before I even kind of had a go myself. And I still really just wanted to be a DJ, but as soon as I started sitting down and writing the records, I realized that I really loved this side of it because actually, DJing can be expressive, but you're playing someone else's record, so there's only so much expression you can do. I mean, I think some people probably disagree with me on that, but it's definitely something that I found that I could express myself more in the writing of records. I mean, I don't know what the hell I was expressing myself in my early productions. Not much, to be honest, or nothing good anyway. But it was just it fell that I was getting back home from school, and slowly, rather than like going on my decks and playing, I was more moving into wanting to write music, and I started to become members of at that time, I was making UK Garage, and there's a big forum called Uptown Records, and there's another one called Stay Locked, and I was posting on that a lot, and I that was that was the first time when I joined those. It was kind of was the first time I was actually ever brave enough to show what I'd been making to anybody else other than my friends, obviously. And I got some good feedback from it. And as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid, that really spurred me on to kind of take the production more seriously. So move from Impulse Tracker to Reason, and then onwards to Logic and Ableton. But that really spurred me on. And then when I think I was 17, there was a UK garage record called Hold Me Tight by DJ Louis, and there was a remix competition on one of these forums, and I won it when I was like 16. So that at that point, it was really, which was meant to come out but never did, which is always a bit gutting, to be honest. I don't even have that remix anymore, which is a bit of a shame. But that really spurred me on to do production, and I think I was still DJing bits and bobs, but the parties that we were doing kind of came to an end as we were going out drinking and going to getting into pubs and stuff. And we didn't need the parties as much. Also, it was a really lucrative business. Those parties basically bought me like half of these records. So other people kind of muscled in, so it just wasn't quite the same. But yeah, and then when I went to university, I was making a lot of music, and I fell into the bassline scene by accident. By the first record I ever put out, which was again I won a competition on Stay Locked to get vinyl pressed when I was 17 or 18. Must have been 18 actually, and it was they pressed them, and then they just delivered 200 record to my bed, like to my house, my parents' house, and I was like, what the fuck do I do with these? So, but luckily, one of the tracks on there was a 4/4 like dubby version of the original two-step record that I won with, and that kind of took off in Birmingham and Sheffield. But because I was down south, I didn't really know. So I kind of thought that, right, I'm going off to university. I'm just going to produce. I'm not going to DJ. Like I didn't take my decks to uni because I didn't have like room for them and stuff. So naturally, I just started making music, and then suddenly, these DJs like Sean Banger Scott and Jamie Duggan, like kind of niche. What it was called niche, the nightclub residents were playing my stuff, and then they started emailing me asking to make them tunes. Well, I wasn't playing them, I was just making them. So at that point I felt like I became a lot more of a producer, and in some ways, I think that probably made me a lot better, spurred me to become better as a producer. I think if I'd have carried on playing as regularly as I wanted to, I don't know if I'd have focused so much on the production, because in those days you didn't need to in the same way.
Yeah, I think like I know you're a big garage head. Did you feel like when with your first productions though, like you were limiting yourself?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, limiting might be a bit. I think I was probably limited. I couldn't quite get what I wanted out. And do you know what? For a long time, I thought I wasn't good enough to make house music, and I actually found UK garage really quite, by the end anyway, quite easy to make. And I always thought that my production, the quality was never good enough to go into the house music realm. So I think that actually I hid in garage for a lot longer than I wanted to, should have done, because I guess what you said is right. I limited myself because I had this barrier in my mind that my productions are never going to get played by, like, Pete Tong or Carl Cox or whatever, that was around at that time. It's actually more around the like minimal 2005 days. So like Horton or like Booker Shade and D Ramirez, obviously back in those days. So it was like I thought my productions would never be quite that good. So I guess I stuck around making this bassline stuff, which I still like it, and I did quite well in it in the end. But it 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 was definitely it was a definite personal limitation that I put on myself, that I just thought, oh, I can't do this, so I didn't bother trying. And there's actually a friend of mine that pushed me to do it.
As a good friend then.
Yeah. Well, he was a resident for Fuse, Enzo's night. He's called Ethel, the first person I ever released music with. He was already playing a lot of house, and he lived around the corner from me. He was actually the younger brother of a girl that was in my school year, so he literally lived around the corner. And you know, it's Tring. All the kids know each other. He was also DJing some of these parties by the time I left, and it was just I came back from university, and that's when he finally was like, right, let's sit down and write some music together. And thank God he did, because obviously I probably wouldn't be sat here speaking to you if he hadn't kind of pushed me into taking the leap to do it.
Yeah, I think we all need like either a family member or a mate just to kind of give us a prod every now and
Thanks.
again, and just
Yeah.
reaffirm like what we're doing is good.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, it's true.
but then you've also got the other side of it where your family or your mates will just say you're good and you're actually not, you know. So when you put yourself out there in the world, I think it's good because you get proper feedback. Whether it's good
Mm.
or bad, you've got to be able to take it.
Massively. And I think, do you know what? So going back to those forums that I talked about, I think it's something that actually really helped me being able to take, you know, negative criticism and positive so early, because so early on, you know, you're putting them up, and a lot of these people don't know you're a 15-year-old kid showing your music. They're like 25 or whatever, so they'll just tell you bluntly what they think of it, good or bad, you know. And I think that actually, you know, it hurts at first, but if you can, as long as the criticism isn't just your shit, you're a dick, you know, just like really horrible personal negative stuff, which unfortunately I see a lot now on social media. You know, I think criticism is it, or and you know, feedback is the backbone of making a good record, because you know, I would say, and actually, my friends were different to most friends. I think 'cause my friends always used to say my stuff was shit, but you know, there was that's not all true to be fair, but like you know, even with your friends, like you say, you need to find that one person that like opinion you really respect, and you know is going to give you that feedback that you want or that you need. Sorry, not that you want. And you know, for me, it was Tim, and I, you know, really grateful for that. And I don't speak to him that much anymore, which is a shame. But he moved off and did other things. But I still surround myself with people who's, you know, even just before this call, I was working on a record, sent it to one of my friends who's actually a business partner in my production community called Our Tribe. He'll ring me and he'll be like, "This bit doesn't work. This bit's like not good." I still make sure I do that now, even now. You know, I not that you need the you know, reaffirming or whatever, but I just think you listen to some of these old classic records, like these people, these producers were sat in a room with engineers, or they were road testing them with A&R. You know, A&Rs were properly A&Ring and giving their feedback, or their managers or whatever. You know, back in those days, it really felt like, you know, the production of a record to get it where it was actually took a bunch of people that you don't see. A lot of people don't understand that because they just see one name on the header. And I think these days, because production's so much easier to get into, I think some people are, maybe they're scared or whatever, but people have lost that, you know, they've lost that kind of round table of people that they really trust, and that will make your record better.
Hmm. Well, I mean, I was watching. You've seen the documentary, Marshall Jefferson talking about "Move Your Body."
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. And I love that because, you know, he was in the studio with his mates, and then that, you know, the piano line comes, and then everything starts to just come together. And it's just a magical thing. I
Mm,
think when like-minded people are in the studio together and they work and they collab with each other, and
definitely.
you know the light bulb moment goes off, and then they just look at each other going, yeah, this is this.
Yeah, 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 yeah. There's nothing like that. Collaboration, I think, is such an important part of making music. If it's with a singer or just getting feedback. During COVID, well, actually just before COVID, a friend of mine who was in a band called Hadouken, and he actually used to be my MC when we were back in the garage days. And we kind of drifted apart, and then we kind of came back, and he said, "Do you want to make some music?" So we got together and we formed a little duo called Piscean, when the music ended up coming out on Ultra actually. But the thing for me was because, you know, obviously I started house with Ethel, Tim, and then I kind of went off on my own, even though there's a few collaborations along the way. What I found was when we were sitting in the studio together, I really missed those moments. You getting a bass line right on your own, you might go, "Oh yeah," but actually, like when you're in a room with people, you can really appreciate the magic of like that mistake turning what something that you thought was going to be something else, whereas into something completely different. But you just go with it as like a collaboration partnership or singer or whatever it might be. I think the internet's all well and good for that kind of stuff, but there's nothing like being in the same room when you're collaborating with people.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I mean, even when I'm here and I'm doing my Friday night dance show for me kiddos, me 7-year-old will be like, yeah, dad, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
not, I mean, I used to play out, loads and loads of times years ago, but even just having me kids just be excited by the music I'm playing. It doesn't
mm,
matter to me, as long as there's a smile on their face, I'll have a smile on my face because that's what music is about, is making people happy. So, you know, that's number one for me. I want to talk about like Belly Wedge on Hypercolor. Did
yeah.
Was that your like big stepping stone, to get more of your music out there? And it seems like Belly Wedge seemed to hit a note with a lot more DJs.
So it's interesting you say that, but actually, Belly Wedge was my only essential new tune, actually, which I'm quite proud of. I love that record. I would say actually it was my release previously on Hypercolor to that Let It Go was the first time. Actually, I was going to quit music at that point. I'd had the stuff with Ethel out, but we were earning like 300 quid a gig or whatever, and it was like once a month but it was Let It Go. So I made Let It Go. I was already friends with the Hypercolor boys, and we ended up playing at Glade festival in a ice cream truck, and everyone was fucking wasted, whatever. And I threw the demo of Let It Go on, and Jamie was like, "Yeah, we'll put that out." And it was that record that actually was the one where I feel like people and DJs, going from this underground person that a few of like the heads like to going to um going into like being a properly touring DJ and like people actually looking out for my releases and stuff. I think Let It Go and then Box Clever and then obviously Belly Wedge and Little Things kind of came out, if not the same year, very quickly. And I think it was that kind of flow between all three of them which really created, for want of a better word, hype or like, relevance, maybe another word. I don't know. I don't whatever what people want to say, but I think it was that in all of those three together. The role was the reason that kind of people started taking notice. And actually, I really still like Belly Wedge and Little Things, but I think that people don't remember them quite as much as they do, like Let It Go or Box Clever. But it was just like you say, and it's interesting. That's why I said it's interesting for you to bring it up because a lot of people don't remember that record. But for me, that was a really big record in my life.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love the record. I mean, again, it stands the test of time for me because the production on it was really, really top draw. And, whenever you can go back and like listen to something that's, 15, 20 years old
Yeah.
and you can still play on a dance floor and still get people coming up going, what new track is that? I love,
Yeah, 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 yeah. I like
back
that as well. It's a good feeling.
it is. I mean, back in the day, when everyone had turntables, you'd see the chain spotters, their heads going like this, trying to read what's on the deck. I love that. Now it's just you get your phone out, you Shazam,
Mm,
or you do something. But yeah, that's that's what it's about. It's just making people happy.
definitely, yeah. I mean, it's an interesting one that record because that I actually always I still play little things, but I don't really play Belly Wedge anymore. I play the other side, so but maybe I'll have to get it out and I'll dust it off a bit and play it next time I play.
Yeah, and I guarantee you'll get people coming up to you going, "Is that your new track?" And you go, "Nah, nah."
It
Not."
was new 14 years ago or whatever it
Yeah.
was, 13 years ago.
Well, when did you meet Will from out?
So Will, I met. through my old manager Dean actually, and I was on Hypercolor, and there was a little bit, not beef, because I think that it wasn't beef, but there was a little bit of rivalry between Hypercolor and House at one point, and almost if you were releasing on one, then you wouldn't release on the other. But I don't. I mean, I think maybe that was just more just talked about, right? It wasn't like a big thing. But I actually ever since I can't remember. It might have been the Bicep record. The one with Ways. From Ways and Odyssey might have been the first time oh no, it can't have been actually. I knew about Simple first actually, Will's other label, and I always and then Ouse kind of came out from nowhere, but I always wanted to release on it. And then I can't remember when I met him actually in person, but I remember my manager sending him loads of demos before he finally actually signed Inkwell. Um, I think Inkwell was the first one, and when I finally got that, you know, yes, okay, let's do this kind of thing, it was a massive thing for me. And else, like Dusky obviously been on there, Midland I think had already released on there, Bicep, Joy Orbison. For me, it was very much how I saw myself in those days, being in that kind of ilk, and that was the sound I was definitely pushing for, which was quite over the 2 years after Box Clever, I think was quite a change for some people because obviously that's very housey, even Let It Go to be honest, and then it maybe turned into a bit more of a darker kind of, really embraced the garage on that one. I think that's probably the first one where I fully let loose, even though Belly Wedge, I guess Belly Wedge was like that, but yeah, yeah, it was a big moment for me. I mean, I think Will as an A&R always has been like really good at what he good at finding newer acts as well as pairing getting the best out of more established acts. And you know I think some labels still do A&Ring really well now, like Defected and whatever, but I think Will is like a proper A&R. He'll work on a record with you, and he's very hard to please, which some people get put off by, but I love that.
Yeah, I mean, when I chatted with him, it was just, that I love the ins and outs of the music industry, and he has such a good ear for music.
Mm, massively.
Not only is he a fantastic DJ, but like you said, A&R, for his label. It was just at a time where the one thing I just didn't like is when people started to, I mean, as you know, Beatport have so many different uh, genres of genres. I always say this: there's some fella in a basement, wherever Beatport are now,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
out of Denver, they've been bought out, but there's somebody in a basement coming up with these genres every week. But Future House kept popping up for house music. I didn't like that
yeah.
because it's house music, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, actually, what we were told when we were releasing stuff is the stuff we were making was deep house, and it's now just in my rhetoric that that's what it was. But I think you're more on the right lane. I think it was just house music. I think it's just at that time house music very much more seen as the that was probably in a bit of a down period in terms of it was just seen as a bit cheesy. The word house wasn't cool as it had been. These things obviously go in circles. I think, deep house hadn't been really pushed on people for years in the same way. So I think deep house or future house, which actually I hated as well, to be honest. I hated future house. Don't mind deep house, but future house. But I think that's why people now call it deep house. But if you listen to it, a lot of that stuff, it's not actually that deep. It's pretty upfront. So I think, like you say, the people who come up with the genres, they have a lot of power, but they might not always know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, like I've heard what tropical house,
No,
bleak.
yeah,
Just I'm like, just enough's enough, you know.
yeah.
That's the
I
thing
mean,
with
yeah. It's hard to know where to put your record now. And even if when you put the name of the style of record you want on Beatport, they'll change it to what they want anyway sometimes.
yeah. Well, I mean, I love my progressive house, but then you go to progressive house on
Oh
beat.
yeah.
Like, what is this?
Well,
This is
for I can remember a while, like when Avicii and all the EDM was that was called progressive house, and I was always like, well, this doesn't sound very much like something Digweed would play. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I think yeah, you're right. I mean, do you know what? I haven't really checked the progressive house thing for a while, so I don't know where it's at. But progressive house is a term that's definitely been bastardized over the last 10, 15 years, I think.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the thing, when you used to go to your local record shop, it's a lot easier to shop. Now, when you go to like Beatport or Juno or wherever you usually get music, you get lost down a rabbit hole.
Massively. I mean, to be honest with you though, I quite like that because even, I think Beatport or any of these stores, it's very easy to find stuff that's super popular. But I actually, even if I make some missed turns and I have to go back, I really like it's not like it used to be. I used to go to a record shop every weekend and buy a record, and you were handed records once you knew them, and you kind of understand what you liked, and you had that community around you of people like the buzz. But I still think that and I guess this is why I probably will always do DJing, whatever happens. I love that digging and finding stuff that I don't know, and maybe finding an artist I've never heard of before. If I've heard of them, maybe I've only heard one song, and then I can go through. Tend not to do it by genre on Beatport. I kind of start with or it just starts naturally with a song that I like, and then I dig deeper through that. I think the thing is with genres these days, like you're trying to say, I guess, say it might be down on Beatport as like, UK garage, but it's still you still will be able to play it in a house, set if you just slow it down a bit. So I think genres are less important these days, although for some people I think it's got more important in some way, in some aspects. And actually people are less willing to mix genres, even though I think these days they work more fluidly than they ever have.
Well, I mean, if music's good, it's good. Doesn't
Mm,
matter what genre it is. If you can put and play it in a set and let the set, go where you want it to go, then who cares what it's labeled. Um,
massively. Yeah,
got to
that's
talk.
true.
I've got to talk to you about the album Blurred. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, again, quite a few years old.
10 years this year, 10 years.
Yeah, it's a big thing for, a producer to put out an album. We see a lot of like DJs that make music but only put out like, 12 inches. Um, but you made an album and it's a fantastic album. I mean,
Oh, thank you.
you've got your breaks, drum and bass in there, and a lot of vocals. Uh,
Mm.
how was it like sitting down? Did you, when talking to Will? Did you already have the projects like planned out, or did you?
No, no, no. So I wanted to do an album for quite a long time, and I wrote a bunch of demos, and I was obviously releasing on House already, but I didn't, at that point they weren't really doing albums as such when I first started talking to them. Obviously they'd done quite a few now, apart from maybe Will's at that point. I don't know if House had actually done an album by that point, but we were shopping it, and then Will was just like, why don't we get K7, who owned House at that point? He might still own House, and they were like, right, let's do an album, but basically we don't like any of these demos. So what happened was actually it made me sit down and rethink what I wanted out of the album. What I thought I wanted was just loads of house music, like, my typical kind of sound or whatever. Well, I think me and Roger had already done Calling. So that was like the jumping off point into the album almost. Like, that became the lead single, but that also, I think that already existed and was probably one of the reasons they were like, right, yeah, okay, we can do an album. It makes it viable. We got Calling. But it made me sit down and think, what do I actually want to do out of this? Like, do I want this to just stand up now, or do I want this to like be a retrospective of like where my musical tastes come from? Bit dubstep, bit garage, lots of house, like you say, there's a drum and bass record on there. And that's why when I sat down to make it, and I made quite a lot of tracks for it, I didn't necessarily care if they were of the same ilk. I more cared about what that kind of demo meant for me, and I put more emotion into it rather than just making, right, okay, this one's got to work in the clubs here, this one's going to work with these DJs. It was more of a kind of, it was quite a freeing experience to sit down, write a riff like I Want You, which is probably my favorite track I've ever done, and know that it's got somewhere that I can put it out, that I don't have to necessarily worry about who's going to play this, who's going to like I people are going to hopefully listen to this and really enjoy it for the song that it is. And like you say, you can't just do that on 12s, really. Maybe you can have one track. The fourth track can be a little bit more experimental, but you can't. You still need that interaction from DJs or crate diggers that normally have a certain taste and want to get what they want from a record. But the album process for me, I mean, it took about a year, I think, to get it all together, working with different vocalists, scrapping ideas, working on new ones. I did some of the work on that album with Justin Drake from Peace Division. He helped me finish a couple of the records on there. So it was a it was a really fun experience. And do you know what? I really, really enjoyed it. The reason I feel like I haven't done one since is I haven't quite, and I didn't think about this at the time because, like I said, we tried to shop it. But I think one of the reasons I felt so comfortable allowing myself to be me is Will let me do that. And I don't think I've really found the home that will let me do that until, you know, since, to be honest. I went in a slightly different direction after the album. I went a bit more tech housey because I felt like I had to keep up, which actually, looking retrospectively, was completely the wrong decision. But when you're young and you don't, you're going on instinct, sometimes you do make those mistakes. But that album for me really kind of, I'm very proud of it. It's actually, do you know what? I don't listen to it that much, but I listened to it last year on a car journey to a gig, and I thought, oh, do you know what? I actually like this. Like, I think for quite a long time, because working on tracks for a year is actually not how I work. Normally, I'm quite quick at making music. So I think actually by the time it came out, I was a bit sick of the records. So I didn't listen to it that much after it came out, but it was a really great experience, and it's something that I've wanted to do again since. But like I said, I just haven't quite had found the home to do it. And an album, I don't think I'd feel comfortable doing it on my own label, because I want those people the back and forth. I want that, Will to, or whoever it is, to say no, that one doesn't fit there, or my manager to, like, who I don't currently have management, as we're talking, but maybe I do soon. But anyway, but I feel like I need to find a space where I feel comfortable and they're willing to work with me on slightly bigger project, and it actually everyone working together. I think and that's probably why I've not done it since. But I love making Blurred. I think it's great. I got to work with Roses Gabor. I got to work with Yasmin. Got to work with a bunch of other vocalists. MC Dynamite. Unfortunately, that one didn't make it on there, and a couple of others as well. And I love the process. And in some ways, I wish I became more of an album artist. But like I said, I think I made a couple of missteps into Tech House. I don't regret that because I had some really good times, did some great shows, met some great people. But, it's one of those things where you look back and you think, well, if I'd have done it differently, maybe I would be on my fourth album now. But it's just one of those things.
Well, working with vocalists, like how is that? Because do you bring them in? Do you create like the song with them, or do you let them hear the song and they bring the lyrics?
So for I Want You, which is the one with Roses, and can't remember what the track with Yasmin's called. Call my name or say your name or something. Those ones I'd actually written the backings before, sent it off to them through their respective managements at the time, and then we got together in a studio, which I can't remember the name of. As you can tell, my memory's not that great. Somewhere in London, I think I did 2 days. One came in one day, one came in the next, and we laid them down quite quickly. Took what they'd sung, and then I brought it back to my studio, and I kind of did the tweaks and put them together, kind of thing. But I made sure that we recorded it in the same room, even though they'd written it, because it was for my album and it felt quite bit more personal. I felt like I wanted that interaction of people being in the room, and it's something that I have taken on since, and actually still find myself doing. In COVID, and I signed a deal with Ultra, and I was working with some vocalists and stuff, and I still do it sometimes. Although I have to be honest, a lot of the tracks that I've written with vocalists recently have have not come out, even though I'm really passionate about them. I just haven't found a home for them. It's something that I think sitting in a room, even if you don't write it together, they write it at home after an instrumental on an instrumental. I think it's very important for you to try and have as much input as possible with the vocalist, but also give them the freedom to express themselves. Because if you're not happy with the outcome, even if they feel like they've really expressed themselves, and actually I had a massive argument with the vocalist over COVID about this because she sent back a vocal and I was like, look, man, this is just not my vibe. It was a bit too spiritual for me. But I was like, you know. And then she said, well, and I was like, well, yeah, I don't mind you giving your own emotion, but it also has to fit both of us. It's not your single, it's our single. So I think it's very important to work with them quite closely, and it's something that I've tried to remain to do. There's a few times recently where someone will just send you a vocal and then you work on it, but it never quite, the song never really resonates in the future with me as it does if I'm in the room with them, is what I would say. I love working with vocalists. It's some of my favorite stuff. I don't like working with their management.
I'm sure you don't. It's the middleman, isn't it? That
Yeah.
you have to deal with just life. But isn't it just frustrating though for you as a producer not being able to get all of your music heard because you don't know which label to kind of who's gonna like it. I mean, and you're sitting on this music that you've put your heart and soul in, for years.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's something that you have to come to terms with. And I say this to a lot of people because I teach production now. I do one-to-one teaching with people. And some people just keep coming back week after week with the same record and it's not kind of working. Or if they finally finish it and they send it out, they've spent so long on this one record that they feel like it has to be signed and has to be released. And I think it forces people to make a lot of bad decisions in terms of who they release it with and like how they do it. Either they're releasing it with a label where it's not going to get noticed and you're going to become frustrated that you've put all this time and effort in, or someone's going to release, like, say, do it in a way that you don't particularly like or whatever. So, but I think because that people are so desperate to get the music out, which I do understand, but I think you need to set yourself goals. And I have certain goals of labels, and if those labels don't take it, then I have to take my emotion out of that track. I have to be like, okay, there's a reason this song isn't working for all these people, 4 or 5 labels that have rejected it. That's not to say in the future it won't make sense. Maybe the styles slightly change and you can find a home for it a bit more easily. But I have to take my emotion out of it, and I have to be like, right, okay, I might really like this, but maybe this is just a record for me to enjoy at home. And I'm okay with that. Maybe that's because obviously, this has been my job for however long now, 20 years, 21, 2 years, whatever. And I am able to do that. And maybe people in the start of their careers are less able to. But yeah, I think you just have to take the emotion out of it. You have to be less precious. If that track's not working, you have to just move on to the next one. You have to think of this more as like, make sure that you always put music out that you love. Don't just release stuff that you don't love, and that I think you should always try and be yourself. But listen to what's going on around you. That the labels maybe that you're sending them to are not right, but also maybe they don't think that they can sell it. And at this moment in time, like, it's the music business, right? And as much as they might like that song, it's not a personal thing. If they don't feel that they can sell that song, that all they care about is their bottom line. Well, not all they care about, that's a bit harsh, but they have to at least recuperate the money. Otherwise, that they won't be a label anymore. So that's why you just have to stop thinking about it in such a personal way. And it's hard to take yourself. I mean, I have a record at the moment actually called Slipping, which I tried to get signed to Chaos Theory, Kerry's label, and I know the A&R there really well. I sent it to him and he said, oh, I don't know if this is right. And I was like, oh, right, okay. So it's too house. And I'm like, well, the fuck, if I can't release it on Chaos Theory, where the fuck else can I put there? I thought this was a like full on proper house label, and now I'm struggling where to put this out. I mean, it's a record that I don't, it might not do that well, but it's like a full vocal kind of disco, like kind of Armand Van Helden-y like record in a way. But we'll see. But it's I'm and I I do understand that maybe this will be a record that I just have to sit on. But it is tough. It is tough. But you just get used to it. I think vocalists actually struggle with it more than producers in some ways.
Yeah, I would think so, but at the end of the day, it's a learning curve, and I think as being a producer, you've also got to be like a businessman or businesswoman in sense, because
Mm,
you've got to know what works and what doesn't. And music is a business. I'm sure everyone who's in it, apart from, the money men, hate to say that the
but it
music,
is true. Yeah,
but
it
it's
is.
a business. The festivals circuit, it's a business. The club is a business.
Mm.
Record label, it's a business. If the record label doesn't make money, how are they supposed to, put
They can't
out?
release the next records, right? There's only so many losses a business any business can take. It's something though I would say when I transitioned into tech house a little bit and I stopped getting booked for some of the stuff nights that I was being booked for, I really struggled with that because I was like, well, I'm the same guy. I know I can turn up and play these records, but my perception in the zeitgeist of house music at that moment had changed. So like, seeing me on these certain lineups wouldn't make sense anymore. But it's something I really struggled, and actually I took it personally. But it's something you can't you. It's really hard because it is a passion. Everyone gets into music. I'll rephrase that. Most people get into music because they're passionate. People that stick around, you have to be passionate about it because it's one of the most frustrating industries in the world, right? But it does make that rejection of not getting that booking or not getting that signing quite personal. And I think for a few years there, I lost my way. I never found the rejection before personal, but I really started to, and I started to get jealous. And I actually think the negativity showed. I think I'm not spiritual like I mentioned, but I do think you kind of put into you get what from the world what you put out in terms of mentality and like thoughts. And if you're thinking negative and you're talking negatively about yourself and all this stuff, your brain starts to believe it, and also people around you start to believe it if you keep saying disparaging things about yourself. And it's something that I've had to kind of relearn because it's not something that I struggled with when I was first coming through, but it's definitely something that afflicted me, in 2026, no, 2017, sorry, 2018, around that kind of time. It was a real thing for me to get over.
Oh, it is tough. I'm sure, putting out records and, the sales aren't that good. And I think especially for the new kids on the block, they are going to get frustrated. I
Mm,
think, TikTok and Instagram and YouTube show all these, DJs like, flying private jets and everything. And this is what kids want.
yeah,
Um, but you've got to have the passion right here. And
massively.
if you don't have that, you're not going to be a success. You might be
No.
a success for, 15 minutes, and people will eventually cotton on to you. That
Oh,
it's all,
massively, yeah. I think so. I mean, the TikTokification of the music industry, it was always going to work. It always happened with pop, probably it already happened with pop with Instagram, really. You blow up on there because you were good looking or whatever, and then music was almost like, the byproduct of like the brand or whatever. But I think with house music that's starting to happen is like it's a lot easier now to blow up a lot quicker. So you can buy Ableton or fucking download it illegally. Let's be honest, it's what a lot of the kids do. Make a record out of loads of loops from Splice, maybe add a tiny bit of your own flavor, post it on TikTok, and it can blow up, right? And that tune can get loads of people doing dances to it or reactions or whatever, and it blows up. But because those people haven't had the years of like battling away, and I think the rejection, a lot of the rejection that you get in those first like 5 years of that when their next record doesn't do as well, they kind of implode. I've seen it with a few people that I've met. And I think that instant gratification, it's addictive, but it's also so damaging to an artist if that's what you live for. I put out records even this year that I thought was going to do really well, and it did sod all. But you just again, you have to just okay, didn't work. There was a reason it didn't work. What was the reason? Be analytical about it and move on to the next one. But I think if you blow up super quickly, you don't have that kind of mentality. You just think, well, I'm a failure now. So you don't stick with it and you kind of get frustrated. And I think we're going to see this like massive over the next few years. I think it's already happening. You see someone blow up, they're on all the festival shows, all the big shows for a year, and then they're gone because they
Hmm.
can't, they don't have the staying power to do it. And I think probably a lot of management and labels, they don't care. They've got your big hit. They've taken the money from that big hit. If you don't make another one, that's fine. They'll move on to the next person.
What's your thoughts on like ghostwriting?
I mean, it's a tough one. So I used to have a huge issue with ghostwriting, like when I knew people were getting. I think, you know, as a producer myself, I could never go and play a record out in a club and like you were talking about earlier, have someone run up to me and be like, "What's this record?" and then stand there like proud and be like, "Oh, it's mine," and get really excited about it because it would never feel like mine. I mean, even some of my collaborations, I did some additional production on a track with a friend of mine called Jamie Roy, who unfortunately died a few years ago, but he did most of it. I just did like a little bit of a bass line and rearranged it and stuff. But my name's still on the record. And even like, at the time, like people coming up saying how much they love that record, I was like, well, I basically didn't do fuck all on it. So like, I can't get that excited by this. I mean, the fact that I've done it now after he died and I'm part of his story means a lot to me, but for a different reason, I suppose. But I don't think I can't really stand behind a ghost produced record and get really, really positive. I couldn't like set. I mean, I fucking hate social media anyway, but I need to get better at it. I'd struggle even harder to go on social media and sell a record that actually I hadn't even made. I think it takes a certain type of person to be able to do that, and I don't think. I think there's two types of ghostwriting. There's like going on one of these Russian sites, buying a record, releasing it. Right at that moment, you've had nothing to do with it apart from getting it signed and selling it. There's another thing, like, and people call this ghostwriting, but I'm less sure now. If that person's going into the studio with an engineer, they've got a bit of an idea, but they just don't have the technical nous to do it. But they're like still heavily involved in the process. I used to have a big problem with that as well. I don't anymore. As long as like the person's having some kind of interaction with the process of the creation, I've kind of made my peace with it because at least they're putting in the effort or they're putting in their input and they're showing love and they're like some of their emotion will hopefully come out of that record. But yeah, if you just buy a record and release it, like how could you ever stand there in a club and be like, wow, I'm so proud of this, how well this record's doing, when actually Nick, like Vlad or whoever in Russia, well, most of them seem to be Russian, I don't know why, has actually made this. I wouldn't be able to do that personally.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. It's just a bit cringy, isn't it? Just to take all the accolades and you've done absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all. Like, I mean,
You're the
to,
face. That's it.
yeah, yeah, you're the face, and you know it must feel like for someone who has a little bit of money, it must feel like the easy way in to the music industry. And if you do it right, it is. But I just I have too much pride for that. I think I just don't. I don't think I could. I could hold my head up in the same way without if I play or if I release a record and someone says it's shit, at least like you know I, it's created a feeling in them, and I've created that feeling, even if it's negative. If I buy a record and put it out, someone says it's shit, I have literally no emotion connected to that. Well, I guess in some ways that might be better, but I just it's not for me. But yeah, I've come to peace with the like starting doing engineering. Like I find the other guys producing is engineering. I think for a long time they kind of got a little bit um confused, especially online. And I probably wasn't the nicest to a few people that I know had that done for them. But we live and learn. We mellow as we get older and all that kind of stuff. And also, I think I've done a bit of engineering for people now, and as long as people are interactive with it and they're involved, I realise actually, they are putting some of themselves into it.
All right. Talk to me about Saints and Sonnets. What's going on?
Okay, cool. So I can't exactly tell you, but all I'm going to say is recently I have been approached by a company to amalgamate all my labels and restart. So I had Saints and Sonnets, I had No Ideas Original, and obviously I've got Dumb Safari now, and kind of like each one still had their own personality, but essentially restart Saints and Sonnets for what it was. A really like I see Saints and Sonnets as like a pure deep house record label, like house, deep house, kind of very. I'm really looking forward to it. We're talking about doing some vinyl again. We're, going to get some of the old faces back on, hopefully, but also kind of keeping that realm of like just really cool, credible, groovy house, which was what Saints and Sonnets was always meant to be. I started with a guy called Jimmy Huxley, randomly. Um, and when the reason it stopped was because we started to have quite differing views of what we should do with the label. And I think at that point, I we actually got an offer by who was distributing it at the time for them to carry on running it, and they would just like turn it into like a release kind of mill. They'd choose the music, they'd do it. And I was I'd actually run some fidget house record labels before, but Saints and Sonnets was the first label that I was really proud of every single release we put out on there. It was quite varied, but I'm very happy to. I've wanted to bring it back for years, and now I've been in the last couple of weeks. I've been given a chance to do it, and it feels like the right time. That kind of like I always wanted it to be when I first started, like a kind of clone or Rush Hour kind of vinyl staple, but like just really cool house music. And I think now I've got Dumb Safari and No Ideas Original was a bit more deep housey, like deep housey. Um, I can and now I can flex all my muscles because my what I like is actually really varied. So I think it's the right time to do it. So hopefully by the start of next year we will be having the first releases out, and we're going to do some reissues. I think we're going to do some remixes of the old catalog as well, as long as I've got the parts. I think it's going to be a really fun exercise, and yeah, I'm just really, they came to me to do it. Actually, we were having a conversation about something else, and it just kind of came up, and then yeah, it seems like it's going to happen. But I've got to do some paperwork first before it happens, and I'm not very good at that, so it might take a while. That's why I'm giving myself a buffer until January.
I look forward to it because I love the label. I really do.
Nice, thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure to have you come on and tell your story, and yeah, it's always great to have, like I said, have guests that I have listened to for a very, very long time, and and talk about the footy as well. So it's like an added bonus. Not every guest that comes on likes the football. Some
No.
some of them don't even know what a football looks like. You know,
Fair enough, I suppose. Yeah, that's it.
which is fine. But when I have the likes of like Justin Robertson on, who
Oh,
just does
nice. Yeah.
football, you've got to say yes, of course. He's just an incredible human being.
Oh, massively. Yeah.
And he goes back way, way, 30 plus years. He's doing something right, and he still loves it. So hopefully, I'll talk to you, keep in touch, and
Yeah,
in
definitely.
years, hopefully the podcast is still around. I'll bring you back, and then
Oh man, definitely. I'd love to come back once we've relaunched Saints and Sonnets for a few years, and we can talk about how much of a disaster it was. That could be the next podcast.
well, hopefully you'll have an album out by then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fingers crossed. Yeah, yeah. Maybe that's the time to do it. A couple of years, give myself a bit of breathing room. But yeah, man. Well, thank you for having me on. Anyway, it's a pleasure to be asked.
Any upcoming releases you can talk about?
So I've got something coming out on Southern Fried in September, and another. I've got a release on Moxie, which is obviously Darius Syrossian's label. Then we're doing another Records as well, towards the end of the year, and just a few other little bits and bobs that I can't quite talk about yet. But those are the next kind of three big ones. So looking forward to that. I mean, I feel like Records at the moment for the music I'm making is quite a natural home. So it was pretty good when Matt said he was into the music, and to do two EPs as well is great. So looking forward to seeing what people think of the next one. But the first one's done. The reaction's been great, and I couldn't be happier, to be fair.
Nice one. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Please go check out Huxley on, I say Bandcamp, just because the artist
I don't
gets.
control my own Bandcamp though, so like I'm not getting any money from
What?
it.
Oh no, well then don't go check out Huxley's Bandcamp. That money goes to someplace else. But usually I'll say Bandcamp because the artist is the one that makes the music, should get the money. But
Yeah, yeah.
obviously,
Might have missed that.
whatever platform you listen to music on, go check out Huxley's productions and remixes. Um, like I always say, we live in a crazy world right now, so um, my ending is the same that it's been. I wish I didn't really have to say this all the time, but just look after one another, take care of one another. Give your family a hug, give your mate a hug, tell them you love them. But stay safe. Please like, subscribe, put your notifications on, and we'll see you next time.
Perfect. Thank you very much.